Hey, welcome back to another episode of Blue Ridge Bonfire. We are in version 1.2 or 3 of our new studio space. Matt and Logan are on our recently acquired slammed couch. You see trucks that are like squatted out. We're trying that with something different. And we totally didn't forget to put the legs on it earlier when we moved it in. That is not the case.
It's not what happened, I swear.
Yeah. So this space will continue to evolve, but we're going to continue to record in the meantime. So Matt, what are we going to talk about today?
I don't even remember.
How to buy gear that's going to last a lifetime.
How to buy gear that'll last a lifetime.
It was on his
good.
list. He made the list. He had the list on his phone.
I did, and I'm really disappointed that I didn't remember.
So we're going to talk about like how to make some gear choices that you're not going to A, regret, and B, have to replace kind of inordinately fast. I think we've talked about a lot of kind of the principles before that we use for that. And honestly, it's something that kind of hits me now. I guess I'm at the point where, I'm like, holy crap, I've had blank, 10 years. And I actually just had that moment the other day with some cycling shoes. Was looking back through some old photos, trying to find some pictures for something I was working on. Saw pictures from a trip and was like, holy cow, that's the same like clip-in cycling shoes that I've got in the closet right now. Now, they are admittedly on their last legs, but that was 2013.
Wow, so 12 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of miles because you used to bike a lot.
Yeah, they definitely have like stood up multiple sets of cleats on the bottom because those do wear out. But the shoe itself, outside of some, it's ironic. The part that's supposed to be like anti-abrasion is the part that is torn up a little bit. All the other parts that you need to keep it on your foot still functioning. Yeah, so.
And a lot of miles in 10 years at least.
Literally thousands of miles. Yeah, for sure. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, we will always talk about buy once, cry once as a principle of ours. But I think one of the things that people should do, like in the soft goods at least, like turning stuff inside out. And because that's where you're going to hide everything. And thinking about where does somebody hide their work, right? Because there's flaws in everything. Very rarely is something perfect. But where does that show up, and how important is it if there is a flaw, right?
Yeah.
Like even like the boots I'm wearing, oddly enough. So I have two of these exact same pair. And if and one of them has duct tape on the tongue because the seam's folded the wrong way and it digs into the top of my foot, and this pair doesn't.
Right.
So if I go through, like I could identify, because I had that problem with the last pair and duct tape fixed it, and it's been like that for 3 years or something.
Yeah.
But when I went through these, I actually went through looking to figure out only the left boot has that problem, and not on all of them. So I don't know if like some of those left boots were made on a Friday.
Yeah, something in production where
they just got folded the wrong direction.
Yeah.
But you'll find stuff like that. Like I said, there's sort of errors or small debacles and everything. So it's like flip it inside out, see whether there's anything structurally wrong with it, see what it looks like, because that's where, at least again in soft goods, that's where stuff disappears at. But for me, it's look at the places where you don't see it.
Yeah.
Because everybody makes it look good from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And does everybody make, it's like if somebody's doing wiring.
Yeah.
You can make something function and looks good once the hood's shut, but when you open it up, what's it look like?
Right. Yeah.
How well the connector's done.
Yeah.
Are they soldered and heat sealed, or are you using hack and taps and just crimping into another wire and
right.
15
stuff that's wire nuts later. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I mean, like we have a truck right now previous to me, but somebody put a bunch of the little blue hack and tap clip things on it, and absolutely it's got failures.
Right.
Where you can have to jiggle a wire, mess around with it to get something to work. Where, had somebody just spliced that right, put the right butt connector on it, or soldered it together and heat sealed it, like we would not be fighting that battle. So I think when you're looking at stuff like that, I think is important.
Yeah, no, that's true, especially for the soft goods world. I think that applies to like apparel as well. If you
anything like that, sure.
Yeah, I think that some of like not that maybe our crowd is so much into fast fashion brands, but some of that stuff that you see that is, just riding the wave of the trend or whatever. You turn them inside out, and even if you don't know a lot about sewing, it's like, oh wow, this is
A
like
disaster.
barely held together, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the expectation is you're going to wear it once or twice or
Yeah.
whatever,
No,
3
100%.
times and it's dead.
Yeah.
For sure. That's for sure in stuff that is trendy.
Yeah.
That happens really quickly.
And kind of the same thing. Going back to my bike shoe thing, like I've got some merino wool layers that literally have got like rolled seams, and it's worn through on the top layer at like the shoulders because I used to wear those a lot hiking and backpacking. Like that, I had like 3 merino wool tops that if I was
Yeah.
hiking, that's probably what I was wearing. And I was like, wow, they've worn there, but they knew that was a high wear point. So it's got like a nice rolled seam. It hasn't started coming apart, and it's still 100% functional. It's like a base layer, or if I'm on the trail, I don't mind if there's some fraying and holes up here around the shoulders. So,
Yeah. No, I have some long underwear like that. Like some of it's like really good.
Mhm.
And then I've got some that like has peeled down the thigh or whatever, where it's
Yeah.
got a runner in it and it doesn't have near as many miles as the other.
Yeah.
As the other ones do. And again, I knew when I bought it, it was fairly inexpensive for what it was.
Mhm.
And I knew I was kind of taking a risk on that front. Obviously, risk didn't pay because they're a year old. This
Yeah.
is their second season,
Yeah.
and they've given up.
On
They've
the other
given
end
up
of
on
that,
me.
I had a pair that had to have been like 10 years old Patagonia Capilene, but I
I-
will say that once it started going, it was like every time I wore them, like, have I been shot? Did somebody crack off a shotgun when I wasn't noticing? Like,
See, I have 2 pair of Patagonia Capilene that are like in the 20s. Yes, age wise, that are
Yeah.
older than my kids. And one of them's completely worn through in the thigh. Like there's nothing that holds it together anymore.
Yeah.
The other one has got some other wear points where it's kind of got holes poked in it, or looks like it's got holes poked in it, very much shotgun.
Yeah, right.
esque.
Yeah.
But this one is just pure wear. It's just there's nothing left in the top of the thigh.
And no complaints because again, that was like the pair of synthetic thermals I had, so I just wore them a ton.
Yeah, no, these got lots and lots of miles and
Yeah.
lots of days on them, and absolutely nothing. And I think like when you're looking at bumpers and stuff, like how much did they hide? Like how much of it is covered with silicone or covered with some kind of some kind of paste that they're putting in the seam. How much of it's actually welded?
Yeah.
What do the welds look like? If you can look at the backside of it, you're going to be able to see a lot of like what was welded through because they're not going to spend their time hiding that.
Yeah.
They don't spend their time covering that kind of stuff up. So when you look at stuff that's fabricated like that, look at what the welds look like, and then look on the backside. Can you see penetration in a lot of that stuff? Because a lot of places you can see it.
Yeah.
And then how much of the caulk are they using?
Yeah.
To hide what they did or cover what they're not welding on that front. And even that, how well is the caulk done? You know what I mean? Like I have a product that's not US made currently that leaks.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't caulked well.
Yeah.
And it's a fairly expensive piece of equipment that
Needs.
has needed it from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like it just has been a painful piece from the beginning.
Kind of a throwback story. I honestly don't remember who made the bumper, but another great way to tell the quality of a bumper is swing out is if somebody mounts max tracks on the tire, because that's like a metronome for the amount of movement. I really don't remember who had that bumper, but you remember being on a trip and we were following that truck, and the max tracks were like doing like
left to right,
swinging like a pendulum. And it was just, obviously they're 18 inches above the tire, so it was just exaggerating that movement. And you and I both were like, "Oh, let's not follow that guy.
Let's not get too close. That shit's going to come off." Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah,
I don't remember who it was, but I do absolutely remember. And I mean, I think looking at slop and play and thinking about even if it makes sense to put something there.
Right.
I mean, I think that's another thing. Like a lot of times, it doesn't even make sense to hang, a 40 off or whatever. 300 pounds of tire off the back bumper gets pretty sketch pretty quick.
Yeah, no. Logan, something that you and I talked about at X Fest is you've got is your tent Nemo?
My tent is an REI with a Nemo sleeping pad.
Maybe it's Nemo sleeping pad that you've got some years on, but like that's a brand that makes good stuff. They're really innovative. And that kind of goes back to the buy once, cry once. You talked about like, you use that on like some pretty gnarly conditions and stuff like that and lots of trips, but like still no problems with a product that's obviously built to be lightweight, but like, has still held up and everything.
I've heard some people say with those, you had to be careful because like any little ember or anything it's going to put a tiny pinhole in it.
Yeah.
But even that, like, it ships with a bunch of easy to put on patches. So if
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, be careful with it, but it's also, if you're buying from a brand that knows their stuff and what they're making, hopefully they have some foresight
Well, not
for
just
those
yeah.
sorts of things too.
I appreciate that they not only made it repairable but included that.
Yeah.
I think that's probably tells a tale in terms of like how they expect the gear to be used, right?
Yeah.
Of like, they yeah, it may have a failure, but here we're going to give you the tools to keep it rolling. Yeah.
To trail maintenance it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing that's interesting is how much stuff can be, is field repairable. And,
Yeah.
what can you fix in the field? And, I mean, it's even like hardware and stuff. Like we try to use as much field maintenanceable
Yeah.
hardware as we can.
That's
Now,
something that we tell people with attics a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like they'll be like, "Oh, my clip broke." We're like, "Yes, because your attachment point in your vehicle didn't." Like,
Right,
we
yeah.
want you to be able to thread a plastic G hook on. And honestly, I'll tell customers sometimes, like, we stopped using metal G hooks because we had people cranking down on the attic so hard that it was like, stressing parts in the car.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to pop a plastic or a metal G hook. But if you pop a plastic one, it's like 30 seconds,
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. It takes nothing to put it back on. Easy
Yeah.
to replace. And
Yeah.
easy solution, right?
Right.
And I think, and that's something to think about too when you're looking at that stuff. And the other thing is like, is it designed obsolescence?
Mhm.
Like, I hate stuff that has pockets for something specific. So it's like, because that always changes. I mean, you think about
Yeah.
like, I can remember backpacks that had straps that had pockets for a flip phone on them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That like, if they're doing that, they're probably not designing long term, or they're probably not thinking about long term. They're
Yeah.
just turning on, and it's not necessarily fashion, but they're just looking to turn that pretty quick.
Yeah.
And that's something to think about too. If there's a bunch of things that are very, very specific to something,
Mhm.
a lot of times you can just plan on the fact that it's probably not super
Yeah.
well put together, because that's a year or two life cycle
Right.
of whatever that thing is, and then it's out. And so that's one of the things I like about the kind of modularity piece of what we do,
Yeah.
is that all of it's designed to be added onto or removed to based on kind of how you're kitting things. And not that we haven't talked about that a lot, but there's a lot of things like that. You know what I mean? Like, even some of the cases, some of the aluminum cases and stuff like that are stackable, and you can put stuff on the inside, and you can do a lot of different things with them. So they're going to be around for a really long time.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a piece of equipment you're going to have short term.
Even if you totally change the purpose of what you're carrying in it, like
Right.
there's accessories. Yeah.
Yeah. There's totally ways to use it and have it function in a different way, whether it's put steps on it or cutting boards or whatever.
That's a really good point with the design obsolescence, and something obviously in an industry that I've maybe paid a little bit more attention to, but the bike world is really guilty of a lot of that, of like, different systems, different brands, like their stuff won't work together, or, oh, it's 2 generations old. If you want to upgrade this one part, you got to upgrade all of it because it's no longer compatible. And that was something that kind of drove me towards my latest bike build, which I've had for a number of years now, something I used to couldn't say. When I was kind of finalizing that, went with microshift for the it's a one by system, so the rear derailleur is the only one it has, but their stuff's made to work with a bunch of other stuff, and that's what I appreciate. They came from a brand that designed obsolescence was part of the philosophy.
Yeah.
And those guys were like, we're not going to do that. We want people to be able to like kind of like get creative and make it work with whatever they have or whatever they want it to work with, and that was a big appeal, kind of choosing them.
Yeah, if it doesn't integrate, you know what I mean? Like, you'll see a lot of things, like in, PALS or Molly platform stuff.
Mhm.
There's a lot of stuff that doesn't, there's a spec to it, right? Like that the Molly system, basically, there's a series of measurements to it that everything should be relatively universal.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things you'll see a lot of stuff that's made where it's like, oh, this is on two inches on center, or this is, whatever it is. And half the stuff that
Logan
you
deals
have
with it every day.
Yeah, the go
doesn't
route.
fit.
Yeah, it's Molly, but it's
Go
not.
route's not it's the standard size.
Yeah,
Okay.
their spacing on the inside is something
It's
wild.
ridiculous.
Like, it's 5 rows wide, right? But like,
I don't even remember. I just know that if I take a standard, like I have a Mountain Hardware standard Molly bag, like
Yeah.
pouch, and it basically it spans like 3. Like
Yeah.
instead of lining up with 2, it's
to
like
it,
spans over 3 and runs through.
I think that's
Makes
the
sense.
the ratio is like they've got 5 rows in the bag, but it should really only be 4, or maybe it's 6 and it should only be 5. Like their columns are too skinny, and the problem is if you have a standard pouch, well, there's a point where you're hitting in the middle.
Right.
So
Yeah, where it doesn't work. I think that's not uncommon.
yeah, and
In
that's something you really have to
one-
watch in rigid panels
Rigid panels for sure.
because it's almost, if not, it may honestly be impossible to make a rigid moly panel to spec because as you weave through, you're losing so much strap.
Well, you can make it to spec. The problem is that if you take it normal, like what you just said, if you take a normal panel
Yeah.
and as you weave it through, you lose length of strap. So you almost have to have, an extra 3/8 or
Yeah.
half an inch of strap to it, depending on how long it is to attach to something like that.
Yeah.
That's a pretty common thing with rigid panels is
Yeah.
nothing quite fits it. Quite
Especially
fit
when you
them
get
well.
like taller stuff like
Yeah,
our
yeah.
fire extinguishers or large GPs, you're probably okay if you've only got
Or if you really try to actually weave it through the way you're supposed to. If
Yeah,
you
yeah.
just run it through the back and snap it in the bottom, it's probably
because
fine.
you're not losing a little bit
right
on
if you-
every single
right.
turn.
If you
Yeah.
if you actually weave it in and out and back and
Yeah,
forth, and then all of a sudden it's
Right.
the math suddenly stops mathing and you have trouble with it.
Yeah.
But I think looking at things like that, coming back to like, looking at things like that as you're buying gear, so that if you buy a piece of equipment, it's going to integrate with a piece of equipment down the road.
Mhm.
I think that's an important piece, or at least something that I
The
am aware
camera
of.
world.
Oh,
Camera world's a nightmare for that.
yeah, no, 100%. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
horrible.
I think it's almost self-feeding because there's like whole brands that make adapters and things like that so that
Yeah.
you can use old stuff on new stuff, vice versa. And it's kind of interesting that it's such a problem. People have capitalized on it in the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is it that makes all those?
There's a few
Moment?
Metabones makes
Yeah.
makes a bunch of stuff like adapters.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe, is it Moment that has all the like
Moment has a
lens
bunch too,
adapters?
yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So that's a statement of like how bad it is.
Which again, I mean, I guess kind of going back to what Matt was saying, that's why when you get into like cinema world
Yeah.
cameras that are stupid expensive, part of them being stupid expensive is the batteries are all universal.
Yeah.
Most of them use V-mount or gold mount batteries, which you can even adapt to each other pretty easily.
Yeah.
But now you're talking about it's just a different world. It's
Right. Yeah.
We're talking about
You'd think that would
$250
get
for a
more
battery.
economical.
The weird thing about that world is that, and like being in it, I kind of get it. People want to keep a separation. Like you want to know that if you're going to work on a movie and you're using that gear, that name means something. So those brands, I don't know. It's weird because the same brands make it, right? Like Sony makes cinema cameras and they make prosumer cameras. They don't want to water down their
Right.
cinema cameras because they want that name to mean something.
Yeah.
So they're gonna make the consumer one
Yeah,
different.
kind of like the is it Canon lenses that were huge in like sports photography for a long time,
Like
and
the L series ones.
yeah, and they had a distinct look, and they wanted them to be like
Yeah.
you could look at the side of the football field, and all the professional photographers had this lens that you could identify from
The
up
red
against it.
ring around the
Yeah,
front was
so-
yeah.
So
I don't remember that, but I'll believe you.
yeah. No, that's a good point. And I think that, some of these systems, especially in electronics, when we say buy once, cry once, it's tough because like as things improve, like the batteries, for example, like Fuji has came out with like they're more or less all their kind of prosumer cameras are going to the newer, larger battery like ours use, but it's because the processors are using more power. So like for the camera to get better, they have to have a bigger battery.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of thing I kind of understand, but like kind of another thing for me, and it kind of comes to mind on the battery thing for the cameras is that I also really, when I'm buying something that's pretty major, I want to get it from a brand I know I can like get a hold of somebody if something does go
Oh
wrong.
gosh, are there parts?
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you get parts for it?
Yeah.
Is there support?
Yeah,
Are
just
you going to need it?
get a human being,
Yeah.
like for the support. I think ordered some books recently, and like the publisher has an Instagram, and was like, "Oh, there was an issue with one of these books. Oh yeah, shoot me a picture. Cool, we'll get that taken care of." Like versus if it was like Barnes and Noble, like how obviously I could probably just walk back into the store there, but if it was off Amazon,
Yeah.
like I was literally able to pick up my phone, snap a picture of the issue, type it out, got 2 days later, hey, sorry about that, we'll get that taken care of. So yeah.
Yeah, no, there's something to be said for supply chain and being able to get parts and being able to get stuff if it's things that you want to be able to replace for sure. I mean, that's another huge decision. I mean, like you look at tractors, like regionally, across the country, you'll see pockets of John Deere, pockets of Case, or pockets of whatever. I mean, probably a lot of pockets of John Deere, but moral of that story is typically that's because there's a decent dealer within range of that pocket.
It's their
And it's
support
like
network.
it's not necessarily that it's because they like red or because they like green. It's because they've got a really good dealer close by. That is a red dealer. Therefore, from here on out, everybody's got red tractors around them, because if they got a problem, the Deere dealer's 4 hours away, and the Case or IH dealer or whatever is
down the road.
is an hour away, and they're gonna spend their money there.
Yeah. That's a good point. Some of that stuff is still kind of wild. Obviously, in recent years, we've had some like really crazy supply chain stuff, but like when you start hearing about even like with new vehicles, like apparently with the new Colorados, there's like a recall, and they don't actually have like the parts available to the dealers to like fix them yet. So like the wait times are crazy.
Well, that was the problem with the Toyota, right? Like with the in the Tundras with the transmissions. I mean, or at least I was talking to somebody that had a very new Tundra with a transmission went out, like,
and they
or started having problems, and it was like, oh, we can have this, yes, this is under warranty. It'll be 3 months.
Right.
It took me 8 months to get my engine replaced from that.
Yeah, I was going to say, this has been years ago, but worked with a guy's wife's Subaru had a motor issue, and it was a recall, but they had a loaner car for like 6 months because it was like her car was just sitting there in the queue, and they could only get so many allotments for these, replacements. So
yeah,
we'll get you when we get you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's certainly, like, again, certainly service is something that would help make my decision on stuff like that, anything like that, honestly. Just knowing I could get stuff for it, where I could get it, whether I get somebody I can talk to, as far as, again, long-term purchases and stuff like that. And how repairable is it? I mean, you're sitting in an A or B chair right now. As much as I hate to say it, I mean, as a Chinesian piece goes, short of the bars breaking, I pretty much could put that back together. If from a Lowe's, it might not be the exact same rivets, but I can probably run a bolt through there that'll make it work. And, and get some more life out of something like that. Where a lot of stuff you'll find, as soon as a little bit of stitching goes, the whole thing's worthless.
Grenades. Yeah.
I mean, or anything comes apart and it just, it's dead.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of stuff when you look at it, it's like, oh, I could repair this. Going back to field maintenanceable, not necessarily field maintenanceable but again, with a drill and a little bit of creativity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and honestly, even something like this kind of depends on how you pack, but like between our two trucks, I bet we'd have a bolt that would probably work.
Probably. No, there's a good chance that I've got a 2 or 2.5 inch long number 10.
Yeah. Floating somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure I do, with a nylock and just in case I need to screw something together.
That's a part of like gear that lasts a lifetime. Maybe not necessarily lasting a lifetime, but partnering with like good buying decisions, having some skill. Like I've definitely, had a jacket that I really like that, it may have had a blown out seam or something from abrasion or it was a flaw, but I was able to stitch it up enough, it was passable. So
for another, gear that lasts a lifetime tip, stuff can get some wear. Like if it still works, I know too many people who just are like, oh, it's looking dingy or it's got a little tear or whatever. But if it's functional, part of it lasting a lifetime is you using it. Until
showing some wear, right?
Using it until it's dead.
No. For
sure.
me, that's boots. Like I'll almost exclusively own resellable shoes now because I hate breaking in shoes. And sometimes the uppers look really roughed, and I'll take a Sunday afternoon to condition 2 or 3 pairs.
Yeah.
But things that are repairable, kind of like refurbishable. It was funny. We were just talking to Dustin, our electrician, and we were having some work done. We were talking about some bathroom stuff, and he was like, "Hey, when you go get a faucet, Delta is worth it because you can get rebuild kits for all those. Whereas all the other brands that maybe they were $10-15 cheaper." It's just, once it goes, it goes. There's nothing.
You're just replacing the whole thing again, as opposed to be able to buy a seal kit for it and put it back together.
Yeah.
No, I think that's something. And two, the other thing is like how fast do you turn gear? I mean, there's probably a lot of people that aren't in a position where they're going to wear out. Maybe none of that matters. I don't know. But if you're using it, and that's our goal is to have customers that use their gear.
Yeah.
As part of that, or at least that's part of the thinking, is that we try to build it for people that are going to put wear on it and are going to find out, where the failure points are and stuff like that. I mean, it's part of why we warranty it. Was
Yeah, no,
that's
100%.
another thing to be thinking about is, do they warranty it? How often do they have to warranty it? Have you had stuff from them before where they've
Yeah.
had to warranty things? How easy is the warranty to deal with? I mean, like, we're pretty simple.
Right,
Send
yeah.
a photo, send it back, whatever. I
Yeah.
mean, if it's most times send a photo and we just replace it without much thought.
Yeah.
But that's because we just don't have a lot of that kind of return.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah.
So it's easy to be, when you don't have a bunch of returns, it's easy to say, no big deal.
Mhm.
We absolutely will send you a new one. It's not enough these break to matter.
Yeah. Not that it's gear, but I find it ironic this was our discussion today when it just hit me. I was talking to Logan about this right before you got here. So this couch has been in 3 houses and 3 apartments that we've lived in. We got it probably we got married in 2012. I think we probably got it in like 14 from some friends that were moving. And I know they have had it since at least 2010. And like we have dogs, they had dogs, it's not been like babied by any means.
Right.
It definitely needs repair on one cushion,
time to
arguably 2.
we'll just for the viewers.
Yeah.
There it is.
The last 6 months we had it for
little
sure had
something
like a cushion cover on it.
For those of you watching on video,
Yeah.
Logan is revealing the
Large tear.
Gaping hole.
Yeah, we had cushion covers on it for at least 6 months, and it could use like leather conditioner. But like if you had an upholstery place redo that cushion cover and took a couple hours to condition the leather, like this thing will just keep on trucking. And it's
I mean, the reality is you could probably patch that without a huge fight. It
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily look spectacular,
Yeah.
but it totally would be. It would be functional and
Yeah.
comfortable. And that's going back to like when when you're looking at buying stuff that's leather, especially like. And I'm probably going to go way too deep in the weeds and seeds here on this one, but
no, this I think I know where you're going. This is handy information because some people just don't know.
yeah. So like things like, so I've worked a lot with leather over the years, but one of the things to think about is like how tight is the grain of the leather, right? Because the tightness of the grain will impact how long it lasts.
Mhm.
And when you look at hides, the tightness of the grain will depend on the amount of stress that cow is under. So like a Canadian or a North like Montana based cow is going to have a lot tighter grain and a lot heavier hide because the winter stress makes him build hide.
Mhm.
So if you get hides that are out of Mexico or Florida or whatever, Texas or whatever, the hides just aren't as good.
Yeah.
The quality isn't as good. They're not as tight grained. They're not as thick. And not that you don't skive a hide down to make it the thickness you want, but at the same time, like the grain just is never as good. It
Yeah.
doesn't hold up as well. Dog leashes, this is, honestly a fairly important thing to think about, as
Yeah.
far as their longevity and how well they take in water, because the more porous they are, the more they soak up water, the quicker they are to rot or the more maintenance they require, where something like, again, this couch, it's actual leather,
Yeah.
versus something that's like some poor version of leather.
Pleather. Right.
Yeah. Or, it's like, so there's one of the big leather manufacturers, and I'm going to digress a whole bunch, but one of the big leather manufacturers, one of the 2 biggest in the country, is in Pennsylvania. And they basically, they run, you run leather through what's called a skiver, which is basically a planer for leather that makes it all the same thickness, or a hide close to the same thickness, because you never get perfection out of a hide. But basically they end up with all this dust, this leather dust that shows up at the end of the day, or skiver scraps is what it amounts to. And what they do with that, and they never had a home for this stuff for years and years and years. Like for a really long time, there was no home for this. Now what you do is you crate that stuff up in pallets, you put it on a container and you send it to India, and they now they basically glue it back together and they make particle board leather out of it. And they basically roll it with the glue so that it looks like leather.
On one side.
You can say it's leather,
right.
because it is all leather, but it's just basically all
Yeah.
particle board. It's kind of like what an IKEA shelf would be made out of.
Yeah.
But it's leather. So I mean, it's just interesting when you're looking at stuff like that. Like, this is a 15 or 20-year couch. You want to make sure you like that couch when you buy it, because you're going to own it. But at the same time, you'll see stuff that looks a lot like this that is not.
Yeah.
And that's That's the other thing. Like, you know,
That's interesting. I have to wonder if is that where you would see some, like, because you can go into like a discount shoe store and find some boots that look just like those boots, that you're
Yeah,
wearing,
sure.
but they're a fifth of the price. And obviously they have like cardboard soles and, they're glued together with Elmer's from the kindergarten class. But like that leather, I'm assuming leather is maybe that where that's coming from.
Yeah, or it's way thinner. But anyway, looking at stuff like that, I think is, or at least understanding those kind of purchases enough that, take a couch cushion and unzip it.
Yeah.
What does the inside of that look like?
Yeah.
Does it look like particle board? If you scratch it, what's it look like?
Yeah.
If you fold it, does it look porous or flaky?
Yeah. Yeah.
That means it's probably not particularly good, because if you fold the underside of a piece of leather, it should stay pretty tight, and grain will loosen up a little bit, but it should still stay and look pretty good.
Yeah.
When you're buying leather leashes, this is important to look at that.
Yeah. I think if we ever reupholster this, we should just do it all in veg tan. There's nothing like quite the patina that a good veg tan
Yeah.
builds up.
Yeah.
So it's going to look really weird and like pink for a while, but then slowly it kind of takes on some oils and color from the sun. And,
Yeah. The other thing too is thinking about like where it's made and
Yeah.
how they deal with it.
Yeah.
And we're going to do another podcast talking about some of this. I think that's on our topic list.
Yeah.
But like what are India's environmental responsibilities, or what environmental responsibilities do they take when they're making leather
Yeah.
versus the place in Pennsylvania?
Right. Yeah.
Because the place in Pennsylvania has all kinds of stuff that they have to deal with to make sure that the water that they use, because there's a ton of water used.
Yeah.
Anyway, but thinking about what the impact is and stuff like that is also something that
Yeah.
I would consider when I'm buying equipment.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, yes, for sure, the leather that comes out of India is cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quality is generally speaking lower, unless it's something weird that we don't necessarily do much of here. Like water buffalo probably isn't tanned much in this country. But if you're talking about regular cowhide, like U.S. tanners are typically doing a substantially better job. They have access to better hides, and they treat the environment substantially better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, like I said, we'll talk about that on
Another
more
day,
into that
another
conversation.
podcast.
Yeah, more into that
With a
in
higher
different
couch, so you guys don't feel like you're on the floor.
Yeah, this is.
It's a little weird.
Although it's a little Barco Lounger,
Yeah.
it's kinda like-
lazy boy.
I don't need the ottoman for my feet, because they're basically
Yeah,
out
yeah.
straight as it is.
Yeah.
No, hey, I don't know the brand anymore. I think at one point I did. It's Eddie Bauer, like co-branded. But yeah, whoever made that thing, because I'm sure it wasn't cheap back in
Oh,
08.
yeah.
But like, talk about miles, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, wear cycles. This has definitely got a lot of wear cycles.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely has a lot of wear cycles.
Yeah, our friend's son, who was very much like, pretty much raised with that in the living room, is now, sophomore, junior in college. So like to give you an idea. Yeah, and I remember him being like this tall sitting right there.
Yeah.
So
So it's 20-ish years old.
yeah, no,
18 or
easy.
whatever.
Yeah.
We have one like that too.
Yeah.
That's my mom and dad had forever, and we've had forever. And
Yeah.
it just holds up.
Yeah, no. And I think too, like the quality in terms of stuff, we talk about like last a lifetime, not to kind of go the other direction, but like, you've got your civil defense blanket over there,
Right.
which is probably from the 70s or 80s. It's surplused out, but like it's, was made well. It's not fancy,
Right.
but it will keep you warm. It does look nice. Like the edging on it's actually quite well done, So like, we're not saying you have to spend $1 million on everything.
American pipe dream.
Yeah, Americana pipe dream.
Americana pipe dream.
just
I
got-
always say that wrong. but-
Just got a jacket from them that was a British surplus that I really like. Not wearing it today. It's back in the 50s, so I didn't quite need that warmth.
right.
Yeah, I would say that's I actually don't know how to always tell this, but definitely looking at quality more than price, because I have
No,
some running gear that I bought from a brand that is good, I'll buy like Patagonia stuff and it'll last a long time, and then sometimes it just doesn't
Yeah,
for
no.
whatever reason.
Yeah.
And then I have like an athletic wear thermal shirt that I got from, I don't know, some department store that I've had since college, and it's still still just
Yeah,
going.
no, the name doesn't promise. I don't know if we've talked about that since you've been here, but we've definitely, Matt and I, when ultra shoes got really big, I do zero drop or barefoot for almost all my shoes. Somebody's like, oh, you got to try these. They're great. Got a pair, loved them.
Me too.
For
First
like
pair,
3 months.
best pair I had.
Yeah.
Best pair of shoes I've had maybe ever.
So see, I think I came in like a generation too late because they were awesome for like 3 months.
My next pair,
Yeah.
like zero time,
And then I remember
I-
getting back from a trip.
like days, and came apart.
Oh yeah, no, like I had worn them on some short hikes and a little bit of daily wear. But I think I did a backpacking trip, and I'm like not really rugged terrain. We're
Yeah.
on trails, and I remember like getting back and like just had my foot flexed a little bit, and the foam was like delaminating
Yep.
like a layer on the outside of it, so it was just
I had the
exposing
exact
that.
same experience.
I have a really nice pair of, well, supposedly really nice, like very expensive high-end pair of approach shoes from the company. I actually don't know how to say it. Is it Salewa?
Oh, Salawal? Yeah,
Salewa, yeah. I wore them on one trip and the whole toe cap started peeling off.
Yeah.
I wore them
So
to Zion and just,
it's really funny you say that.
Yeah.
I had a similar situation to our conversation. I had a pair forever that I did for a lot of hiking, especially if it was going to be like scrambling. I actually used them on a lot of bike packing trips because the sole is perfectly flat and the rubber, the pedals grip it really well. So if I, didn't want to clip in. And then told a buddy, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to get some." And mine were 2 or 3 years old at that point, and his just like literally fell apart. Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I wonder what happens there, because if you look at like the marketing on stuff, like, I mean, is that just speed? Like they had to cheapen it up to get it out faster, or they cheapen it up to
Well,
get
I
it out
mean-
faster? But if you look at, what is it? Is it Marmot?
Mammoth.
Mammoth.
That's the one that's like the same people own it that's always owned it. And yeah.
Yeah. So I
Mammut.
think
Mammut.
Mammut. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So the marketing on their stuff is my absolute favorite of anybody's.
Yeah.
Versus like versus Patagonia, right? Because it's
North Face
basically
or-
at one point it was a Patagonia North Face competitor. Right?
Yeah.
It's not really anymore, I don't think, but at one point it was. When you look at it, it's like Patagonia it's you find it everywhere. It's again, fashion wise, it changes at a pretty high rate of speed, and there's new colors and new whatever out every year, and like everything about it is much quicker than it used to be. And I think Patagonia does a very good job of being environmentally friendly and all that stuff. But what's it, Mammut?
Mammut. I think
Mammut?
Mammut. I had
Like when you look at their marketing, this is like, we don't want you.
yeah.
Like if you're gonna wear this in town, like don't fucking buy it.
Yeah.
Like we don't. You're not our customer. Please don't buy our shit.
Yeah.
Go buy somebody else's.
Yeah.
And like that's what all the marketing makes at least makes me feel like this. And I have like a rain jacket like that where it's from a company that's basically like, hey man, we only make this rain jacket for this kind of environment. And if this is not the kind of environment you're going to use it in, don't buy the damn thing.
Yeah.
And like that appeals to me if I've got uses for that application.
Yeah.
But looking at how they're talking about it and how they represent it, I think is a huge thing.
Well, going back to the Ultra thing, if I might be wrong, but there's a pretty distinct line from what I understand about the quality, and it's pre Vanity Fair, post Vanity Fair, because they got bought by the same company that owns North Face and some other folks. Yeah, and I think it's just like a lot of situations where, hey, we bought you. Hey, we need you to cut cost by X percent. Well,
or we're going to increase production, and the
Yeah.
only way we're going to be able to do this is by whatever.
yeah.
Where when you start looking at,
And if the company's doing their due diligence before, they probably had costs and all that stuff kind of figured out. So suddenly you just got to magically make it happen. Well,
where do you do?
Something's
You cut
got to
the-
suffer.
Yeah, you cut the quality. It's kind of like going back to like we talked about Wiggies and stuff before,
Yeah.
where it's just like, same dude, same factory,
Yeah.
same stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, just makes pretty durable stuff, not fancy.
And now I'm kind of curious. We could probably Google it. Like if that happened with Salawa, like, did somebody buy them? Because they were pretty small for a long time.
No, Anyway, I don't know if I have anything else smart to say about that stuff, but I think for sure when you're looking at buying sort of that, good pieces of equipment,
Yeah.
taking into consideration who makes it, where it's made probably has some impact. Not that you get great stuff made all over the world.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they don't make quality a lot of places, but and then having enough understanding about what stuff is like.
Yeah.
If you're really crazy and you want to understand leather, there's a lot of good things to learn. If that's not part of your life, then no big deal. But anyway, that's kind of what our math is on that stuff and the way we think about gear.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully, you learn something on this. If nothing else, you definitely I'm assuming a bunch of you learned something about leather. I know I did. But hopefully you learned something about leather and kind of our thoughts behind our gear, things that last, and why it's important. So, be back in a couple weeks. I almost guarantee you that this setup's going to look slightly different. At the very least, these guys are going to be 3 inches off the ground.
Right. It'll be
Mhm, mhm.
1.23, 1.3.
1.3.
Maybe
Oh,
it'll be 2.0.
The studio, we need a ticker in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need something on this wall. Logan and I were talking about that.
Yeah, we need like a corner shelf so we can get several interesting things back
Yeah.
there. Like we'll light something to make it not just a weird.
I have some really good toy tractors.
Mhm.
Not that would fit our
Oh,
motif,
speaking
but
of cool
just-
stuff, sorry, the 11th hour of the 11th day here on the podcast. We got something really cool brought to us at the shop. If you listen to us at all, you know that we are pretty strong on the overland minivan vein.
Trend.
Yeah.
Trend. It's a trend.
Sure. Upcoming trend.
It's
I think they call it forecasted.
trend in the making.
So
Trend in the making. You
dedicated
watch.
listener, Dustin, friend as well, texted us the other day. Look what I found. It was a Hot Wheels.
Best electrician you'll find.
Yeah, his Chrysler Pacifica that was overland out. It
Oh,
has
yeah.
dual spares. The tires come pre-mudded. I haven't paid a lot of attention to Hot Wheels in a long time. I didn't know they do that now. It appears to have oversized wheels for a Hot Wheels. So yes, the off-road Pacifica is proudly on my desk now. Thanks, Dustin,
Right.
for bringing us that.
We do appreciate the good work you've done
Yeah,
there.
maybe one day we'll have one in the shop driveway. Yeah,
Yeah. If you want.
a much larger one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In full size.
Yeah. So,
All right. That's it.
yeah. See you in a couple weeks.